Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Suburban Rifleman. I am out here once again with the Howa Model 1500 mini action. Hopefully you don't get sick of seeing this rifle. It's going to appear in a lot of videos. I've already gotten some questions about whether I could show it in a little bit closer detail, and I will be doing that. As a matter of fact, I thought about making 2 videos tonight, but that's just not practical. I've learned not to bite off more than I can chew. So I'm focusing first on videos that I owe people. I have a huge backlog of videos that I want to make, and then there's a few videos that I need to make. So over the last 6 months or so, I've been contacted by a couple of different optics manufacturers, one of which is DiscoveryOpt. They're a Chinese manufacturer. They're an OEM manufacturer for a couple of other brands. If you do a little bit of research, it took me about 5 minutes. I had never heard of DiscoveryOpt before, and they contacted me and said, would you like to take a look at a scope? I had never heard of them before, to be honest, but it took me about 5 minutes with my search engine of choice to find a Chinese industrial business-to-business directory, and I quickly found DiscoveryOpt. You can do the same thing, and if you look at one of those pages, it will tell you who DiscoveryOpt's primary customer is, and that is an optics company that anyone who's watching this video has heard of and is probably intimately familiar with. So I don't want to sour my relationship with Discovery. They're already sending me another scope, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but look it up and you'll find out who Discovery is making scopes, or at least optical components for. I went over this scope in some detail about 6 months ago, but I only am today getting a chance to actually test it at the range. And I've already zeroed the scope, and I produced a 0.75 maybe minute of angle group at 100 yards. That's a 3-shot group that I could cover with a nickel. So that's pretty good. But that doesn't really tell us a whole lot. It tells us that the rifle is shooting accurately and that the adjustments work in as much as we can sight in the scope. But now we're going to proceed to doing some more comprehensive testing. I want to make it perfectly clear, I was not paid to make this review. I was given the scope, and to be honest, for a Chinese scope, this is a pretty expensive scope. It sells for about $500. Now, the brand name equivalent from the brand that I alluded to a little while ago sells for about $1,000. So if this scope passes my tests, I would say it's probably well worth the $500 that they're asking. You can check out my earlier video. I've already taken an in-depth look at this scope. I'll probably be splicing in some footage from that review in here. I already took a look at the glass. It's incredibly clear. Oh, and by the way, this is the ED-PRS 5-25 by 56 SFIR. As the name implies, this is ED glass. It is incredibly clear. So far, the focus is beautiful. The reticle is very clear and easy to see. So far, the tracking seems to be pretty good. Now, I was not paid to make this review, and I was encouraged to do a bunch of testing. I'm not exactly following the protocol that Discovery suggested, but I'm doing my own protocol. This is what I'm going to be using going forward when I'm testing scopes. So we're going to fire 3 rounds first to establish our zero. Then we're going to test the tracking in the horizontal tracking. This is graduated in tenths of a milliradian. So 1 milliradian at 100 yards. We are shooting at 100 yards would be about 3.6 inches. So 1 click on this is going to be slightly more than 1/3 of an inch. So what I'm going to do, once we've taken our zero, we've shot our zero group. I'm going to adjust 3 clicks to the right. I'm going to shoot a 3-shot group. I'm going to go back to 0. I'm going to adjust 3 clicks to the left and go back to 0. We can then measure that to see if the tracking is good. I'm going to repeat that with elevation in the vertical axis. Then, when I'm done with that, we're going to test the return to 0, both in the vertical and the horizontal. I'll do that by adjusting the scope as far as I can to the right, adjusting it as far as I can to the left, and going back to 0, firing another 3-shot group. Same thing in the vertical, all the way up, all the way down, back to 0, and fire a 3-shot group to see if my point of impact shifts. If it passes all those tests, I'm going to be extremely impressed with this scope because it seems to be very high quality. Again, go back and check out my earlier video where I look at it in some depth. It seems to be very high quality, and so far it seems to be working very well as well. So without any further ado, let's get started shooting. I'm using Ammo Incorporated brand ammo. Another brand I'm not really familiar with, but I got a good deal on this ammo. And this features 60 grain Hornady AMAX polymer tipped bullets. And so far it's shooting really well. So I've probably talked long enough. Let's get to testing. So first, we're going to shoot a 0 group. 3 shots. I can't believe at this range how unconcerned the groundhogs are. I'm shooting a varmint rifle with varmint ammunition. And there is a big, fat, old, grizzled groundhog, and he can't be more than 25 yards away from me, absolutely unconcerned. They actually allow hunting on this club, which is interesting. All right, so the results of the 100-yard 0. This would have been another one-hole group, essentially. This one's all me, but still sub-minute of angle, so pretty impressive on the part of the rifle, and obviously the scope isn't moving around at all. I don't have a wandering reticle. So now we're going to check our tracking in the horizontal. Again, that wasn't the greatest group, but it's good enough. So now we're going to go 3 clicks left. 1, 2, 3. And fire a 3-shot group. And shot 3. And now 3 clicks right, so we'll go 1, 2, 3, back to 0. 1, 2, 3 to the right. All right, that's 3 to the right. So far, windage is not the greatest. We'll take a look at that. Now you can see my groups are starting to open up a little bit. First of all, I was running out of light. I think I was hurrying a bit. And also, that barrel was getting pretty hot. So these are the results of the windage tracking. This is not super impressive, unless I messed something up. That is possible. I can test this again in the future. But this was the tracking to the right. 3 clicks to the right should have been about 1 inch and a little over 1 inch, and it turned out to be quite a bit more than 1 inch. Then we tested our tracking to the left, and it came out at only about 1/2 inch. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. I'll have to play around with this a little bit more, but that's not super impressive right off the bat. Now we'll go back to 0, 1, 2, 3. Now we will go up 3 and test our vertical tracking. Just let the cases fly. So we'll go back down to 0, 3 clicks, and we will now go 3 clicks down and fire another 3 rounds. And that's 3. I'll go back to 0. So the elevation tracking results are more promising than the windage. Once again, 3 clicks up should have moved the center of my group a little over 1 inch up, and it did exactly that. And 3 clicks down should have moved the center of my group a little over 1 inch down, and it looks like it did pretty much that as well. Not the greatest groups in the world, but looks like the elevation tracking is pretty much spot on. Now we're going to fire 2 more groups. We're going to check the return to 0 in both elevation and windage. I think we're starting with windage. So we will adjust the windage all the way to the right. We've hit our stop. We'll adjust our windage all the way to the left and return to 0. And we'll fire 3 rounds. Should be right on. And here's the results of our windage return to 0. Not a bad group, but it's about 1 inch to the left. So that's, again, not great. It kind of mirrors the tracking results that we got. I'm starting to think this might be an elevation adjustment only scope. Get it right on in the horizontal and just leave the windage knob alone and just use the subtensions in the scope reticle to make windage adjustments. And lastly, we'll test the return to 0 in elevation. So we'll dial this. I'm not going to go all the way to the stop. We'll dial it a full revolution up. back to 0. We'll dial it a full revolution down and back to 0. And we'll fire our last 3 rounds. Then we'll take a look at the targets. Last round. Elevation return to 0, on the other hand, was perfect, exactly as the tracking results seemed to indicate. So, I mean, most people mostly use their elevation knob. Most people don't make a lot of windage adjustments with the windage knob. So if I can get the windage adjusted right where I want it and leave it alone and just use the elevation knob, the scope might actually work pretty well. And actually, we're looking at about 1 minute of angle error, even in the windage. So that's probably not going to ruin a hunt. It's probably not going to stop you from getting that coyote or whatever. So, but the elevation I'm very, very impressed with. So overall, I think the scope's pretty good. So it looks to me like the elevation turret is working better than the windage turret. I'm going to take a closer look at these targets at home beyond what I've just shown you, and we'll see. The jury might still be out on this scope. I would say it's pretty impressive, actually, but perfect it is not. Now, I don't have something like a Vortex to compare this to, so I would say for practical purposes, the discrepancies that I'm seeing out there are not exactly the end of the world unless you were target shooting or shooting at very small varmints and using the target knobs a lot. But I think it's a pretty good scope. We'll try taking another look at it maybe in the future, but I think for the moment, it's hard to argue with what's on paper there. I'm not the greatest shooter in the world, but I've got a pretty solid setup here. And it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. So take that for what it's worth, and I'll see you on the next one. Later, guys.